I mean,
Maybe
but
one
one
out
out
of
of
three or
one.
something like that. One out of some, I don't know. I'm not good
Wow.
at statistics, so.
Right.
Anyways, I know it's over 50% now. But anyways,
Yeah.
so the family had lost count of how many times he was married, but they think it's 6 or 7 times. So, like you said, Elizabeth Taylor.
Hmm.
But he he just, he just loved love. That was his own. That was his only thing, and at least he didn't become a cynical man after like his second marriage or something like that. So when they were married, you know, Lana attended regular Bible study sessions in her neighborhood group, and they just seemed like a really happy couple. So she was, kind of a quiet person, loving person, went about her work as a nurse. Well, I don't want to say a nurse. It was just a caretaker. Stephen had a big personality. He was always the life of the party. He was still doing his charity work. Their house, they lived in like a $1 million home that was
Wow.
actually modeled after a George Washington Mount Vernon home. And
Hmm.
then that home sat on two sections of land, a two-section land on a lakefront. So they were basically in a really nice place.
Wow.
So yeah, their house was like, I guess I don't want to say dream housey because I don't know what George Washington's Mount Vernon home looked like. It could just look weird. But the point is, they had a big house with a lot of land and it sat on a lake. So yeah,
That's pretty
that's
cool.
good. Yeah. So everyone says that he really, really loved his wife. He was a very loving person with his wife. He was very romantic.
That's cool.
So this is what everybody's saying: friends, family, colleagues, um, Lana's people. Everybody's saying that. So just keep that in mind.
Hmm.
So on July 21st, 2018, Lana was out doing like a couple hours of yard work, and she came in the house and just looking around, putting down her little shovel and her the little scissor things that you use to clip the roses, I guess. I don't know what it's called. Shears, I guess.
Hmm.
Brushing the dust off of her, the dirt off of her shoes and everything like that. And then she looks up and she saw that Stephen was dead. She saw him. He was at the bottom of the stairs, and she said she called over to him and he just wasn't moving, and you
Wow.
know she just
It's
freaked
dead
out.
as, for no
And
reason. Well,
yeah,
obviously it wasn't, but it shocked her.
well, she
Yeah.
yeah, she freaked out and she ran out of the house. So at this point in time, Steven is actually 64 and she's 58. So she ran out of the house in a panic, just screaming, screaming, screaming. And she noticed somebody riding a motorcycle down the road, and she flagged him down and was just screaming at him to call 911. The man she flagged down was actually James Blackledge. Yeah, James Blackledge, who was a Vietnam vet. And he just sees this woman coming out screaming, call 911, call 911. So him being a Vietnam vet, of course, he's going to keep his wits about him. And he definitely goes ahead and calls the cops. And he told them
Wow.
that, this panic woman stopped him and she said she thinks her husband fell down the stairs or whatever. So while James was on the phone with the cops, he's again just paying attention to everything. So he notices that she ran like across, like away from him to the next house, this other house, and started knocking on the door. So Lana ran to her neighbor's house. She's knocking on the door. And this is the house of Terry Floyd. So, like I said, James was watching all of this unfold, and just keep in mind that he doesn't know her from a can of paint. He doesn't know her at all, right? Um, and he's just sitting there just watching, the whole thing going on. He just thought, like, as he's watching her and as he's watching the situation, he's just thinking about the whole falling down the stairs thing and how she's acting, and everything was just weird because after she knocked on the neighbor's door, So she comes out to him screaming, looking like she's all like panicked. Then she runs to the
Mm-hmm.
neighbor's door, bangs on the door, and then she just goes back to her house and sits on the front stairs while the
Oh,
neighbor
that's very erratic behavior. It
mm,
doesn't connect.
yeah,
It's like,
while the
yeah.
neighbor went into the house to go and check on her husband. So she's just sitting there. Just listen to me when I'm saying this. She's literally just sitting there. And the
Sitting
neighbor
there,
goes,
right?
yeah,
That's weird.
yeah. And the neighbor goes into the
You're
house to
not
check
you're
on the husband.
but she's no longer panicking. She's almost calm, I guess. Like, okay,
Yeah,
my little
yeah.
show's over for now, guys.
Right, exactly.
Wow,
So they all
crazy.
asked her what happened, and she said she didn't know what happened. She said, that Steve had come down with a bout of vertigo, so he had been sick with vertigo like 3 days before that, and she said he was in bed, like he was bedridden, he couldn't get up, and he'd been nauseous and dizzy and everything like that. And she had checked on him around 11 a.m. and he was sleeping, so she went out to mow the lawn and do some yard work. Before she went outside, though, she said she made sure he had his water. She had his medicines and stuff next to the bed and made sure he had everything he needed. So, if you're feeling dizzy and everything like that, she didn't want him to get up. So she had everything right next to him. So,
Okay.
while she's talking to them, the cops arrive and they go in the house and they find them at the bottom of the stairs. So nobody had, messed up the crime scene or touched anything. So when the cops came, they started talking to Terry Floyd, and there's actually a body cam video of them talking to Terry Floyd. So Terry says, she's kind of on a guilt trip about not checking on him. And then the officer is like, oh no. So Terry's like, just take a look to see if you see any signs of him falling or anything.
Oh
So the officer's
gosh.
like, okay, okay. And then Terry Floyd's like, everything look okay? And the officer's like, I mean, pretty much, it looks fine. Um, so after they had a conversation with Terry, they went that same officer, and one of her friends started comforting her. So Lana's friend is like, trying to tell her you can't blame yourself for anything, any of this, and the officer is agreeing with them, and they're just trying to calm her down. So while all this is going, so you just hearing all this chaos. So while this is all going on, um, Nick French, who is also a cop, but he's also Steven's nephew, heard about this on the wire. Now he's not in this town. He's not a cop for this town, but he did hear about it. And he hurried up and rushed over. So I'm guessing maybe, the cops of this town knew who he was and was like, hey, we need to get Nick French on the phone. This is what's going on. So he got to the scene, and he's like, she gave him a big hug and she started crying, and she's just going on. And so once he let her go, he went and walked into where Steve was, and he saw him laying there dead, and he said it just really really shocked him, because that was his uncle. He loved him, and just to see him like that was just like very very difficult for him.
Wow.
So keep in mind he's a cop, so he got to see how Lana was acting, he got to see the crime scene, and he got to see the body. So at 1 p.m. the coroner received this call about a body, and basically based on what they said, what the people said who were there, um, the coroner ruled it a natural death of a possible heart attack. But remember when I said Officer French got to see everything? Well,
Yep.
he wasn't just a cop, but he was an investigator too. So he was his nephew, and he's an investigator. And just like the veteran, he's looking at Lana's actions. And he said like these red flags started to raise up for him. So
Yeah.
his whole thing was like, as a nurse. So okay, so say you were a nurse. You're not, but say you were a nurse and your husband fell down the stairs. What's the first thing you're gonna do as a nurse, as a medical professional?
Okay, fell down the stairs. Well, first, I think I would check, make sure he's breathing. I feel like I'm on a game show. Question number one. Yeah, I think I would check and see. I'm not sure which door I should choose here. I would check to see if he was breathing, and then I would call 911 if he's not responding. Is that
Okay.
right answer?
I
Do I
mean,
get
that's a good
$500
answer.
or
That's a good
okay?
answer. Well, you don't get five hundred
500
dollars,
for
but it's a good
sure.
answer.
Bummer.
Yeah, no, no, no,
Okay.
no.
What
Maybe
would you do?
25 cents.
What would Okay, so I don't like this game show.
So
So what would you do?
the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call 911 from my house personally. This
Hmm.
is me even talking without reading the like knowing what happened in the story. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call 911 from my house. Why am I gonna leave my husband and run out my house? You know what I'm saying? Unless I thought a burglar was
Well,
in there
yeah,
or
I wouldn't.
something.
I wouldn't necessarily. I don't know why she. Oh, she ran out to get help though, right?
She saw him and she immediately turned around and ran out the house. Like, it's not like she even checked. She just saw him and ran out of the house. So, my first thing would be call 911. Second, check his pulse, or maybe check his pulse and then call 911.
Well,
Third,
that's what I said. I would check his pulse first to make sure he's breathing or hear a heartbeat or something, and then call 911.
yeah. And third, as a medical professional, the first thing I know to do is perform CPR. That's like breathing to
Exactly.
me.
Yeah,
So,
that's why I
those
said
are the
check to see
three
if he's
things I'm
breathing. Is that
definitely going
breathing
to
next?
do.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
Hmm.
I'm saying the action of performing CPR comes as naturally as breathing. So the
Oh
thought of
yeah,
doing
absolutely.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thought of doing that should be like second nature. So this is what
Yeah, you would think.
Officer French is looking at. Like, as a nurse, why didn't she call someone from the phones in the house? They had two phones in the house. Why didn't she mention anything about trying to revive him? Um, Number three, Steve always had a phone on him, but for some reason on this day they couldn't find his
It
phone
wasn't. They couldn't
anywhere.
find it. Wow.
hmm
Mm.
And number four, why wasn't she doing CPR on him when the cops got there? These are all
Right.
valid and legit questions.
So it's a little
And he also,
suspicious.
yeah, and it gets more suspicious. So he also took note of her reaction when the coroner came and asked her about funeral arrangements. So at first she was trying to act like, oh, distraught. Oh, it's just too much right now. Oh, too much. And she like had
Woe
her
is
head in her,
me.
yeah, right. And she had like her head in her hands, and she's like, I have no idea. I don't know. It's just too much going on. So remember, I said they ruled it as a possible heart attack based on what people were saying.
Yeah.
So the coroner, who was actually the deputy coroner, offered to take Steven's body to the morgue and run some tests because, let's just find out what happened. Let's see if he really died of a heart attack, a brain aneurysm, old age, like what really killed him so we can get to the bottom of this.
Hmm.
So the coroner said that. And then his nephew, Officer French, said, yeah, I agree. You should definitely do this. Send the body to the morgue, get some tests run on it to make sure he did die of a heart attack or just, maybe some other natural cause. So when they both said this, she just, the hysteria and all the woe is me stopped. And she looked up from her hands and she was like, the funeral home, the one that's right down the street, the one right down the street, let's just go ahead and take him there and let's have him cremated. That's
Wow.
in that instance, that's how she was. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. We're going to take him to the funeral home down the street and then we're going to have him cremated. So she went from, I don't know, oh my God, I don't know, it's just too much, to let's have him cremated. Okay, yeah, yeah. No, no,
Yeah,
no, no.
she went from that performance to I have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
She
She was
had a
like, yeah, yeah,
plan
yeah. No, no, no.
actually.
I forgot. I
What it sounds
forgot. Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Let me
Yeah.
dry up these tears here. And I forgot that I decided to have him cremated. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So Officer
Sneaky,
French
sneaky.
French wanted to also talk to Chris, which was Steve's other nephew, to let him know that their very, very favorite uncle had just died. But then Lana didn't want him to do that because she said